The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Well, here we go. It is a Monday of game week as the Vols back in action from a bye, and so am I. So about this time yesterday on a Sunday, I was about to walk the Paul Revere Trail, and now we're talking Tennessee, Texas A&M. So with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. We've got a huge monster show lined up. Congratulations to our friend Spencer Riley, who usually joins us on a Monday, but he has a freshman game to attend to after winning the region for Jeff County. So excited about that for him. But with Columbus Day, some schedules are a little bit goofy, and his is one of them. So he will rejoin us next Monday. Tomorrow, of course, it'll be John Adams, and on Wednesday we'll have Jimmy Imes. Thursday, Josh Ward, and then a Football Friday with Fred. And coming up later today, we will have the Vol Report with Jacob Warren and Cooper Mays, and also that Sunday show with Fred that's going to be on a Monday. Don't overthink it. Coming up on the program today, Andrew Stefaniak from Locked On Texas A&M will join us. So we'll get a preview of the Aggies with an off week. It is certainly time to move forward. SEC Power Rankings, a recap of college football that was pretty special. I almost think you're better off being in a bye situation so something crazy doesn't happen to you, because we saw a lot of craziness over the weekend. Tennessee's rushing offense is illegitimate, but we'll begin today with Josh Heupel coming off a bye week and what the national media thinks of the University of Tennessee's football program. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I am pretty good. Dave, how were they in Boston yesterday? You know, no Red Sox in the playoffs, the Patriots just getting draxed. I mean,
yeah, well, we stumbled on to the Italian-American celebration, so that was cool. A lot of neat things going on. We didn't even know the Celtics had a preseason game until I got home. So, yeah, it was my first time in Boston since I was like 12 years old. So, I had to check in on the Sun. And it's funny because even up there where everybody wants to root for their individual small Northeastern irrelevant school in football, what do? They go to the sports bars and they watch the SEC. That's exactly what they do. So welcome to the message board. Those that are on hold, we certainly appreciate that. And we'll get to your comments. Charles says, good to see you back. Caleb did a great job last week. Well, I had no question that he would be, and we've got someone new at Josh's Cannabis Reviews. So that just reminds me to tell you to check out hemphousechat.com, hemphousechat.com. Use the promo code hooked and get 10% off. And I'll tell you more. They've also got the Big Orange Crunch, but they've got you set up with today's tough question, and we do that right now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Before the weekend, how did you think that the national media viewed Tennessee? And then I want to move forward with the line moving already. You had them moving in the polls, but before the weekend, how was Tennessee viewed? Caleb, let me start with that. And then after the weekend, how were they viewed? Because you had some significant losses by teams we thought were championship contenders. So give me a before and after how Tennessee was viewed as a championship contender.
I don't think much has changed before and after the weekend for Tennessee with this bye. I think they're still viewed as I think most national analysts are looking at Tennessee as kind of maybe in a transition year where they're capable of competing with championship contenders, but they're not necessarily a championship contender this year. I think because people overreact to Georgia every week, and we'll talk about this later in the show, I think they have thrown out any chance of Tennessee winning the East because of what Georgia did to Kentucky. I actually reject that argument. I understand where people come from with that. But I think more than anything, I think how they view Tennessee as a team hasn't changed. I think how they view some of the competition has changed. And I think all of a sudden people go from, oh my God, Georgia struggled on the road against a rival that they always struggle against, so they must be bad, to, oh my gosh, Georgia beat Kentucky, they must be good, which is hilarious. So they're thinking Tennessee has no shot against Georgia because Georgia blew out Kentucky, which is laughable to say out loud.
Here are my thoughts on Tennessee after what I saw over the weekend. And you're right. Yeah, Heather Dinich, who we had on, I was watching her on the plane, and she was talking about how Georgia and Alabama reassert themselves as king of the SEC. I thought that was a little bit strong. I watched the weekend being able to not have to focus on Tennessee as we do, and I think it's pretty wide open. I do still think Georgia, as I've said all along, that they do play down to their opponent. They're the preeminent program right now in the nation, and if it was them against the field, I would have to think long and hard about it. I'd probably still take the field. That's the smart bet, Caleb, but it is a little bit more difficult to try to pick the top elite teams. If I gave you 5 elite teams and I responded with 5 elite teams, I bet they're not the same. In other words, this may be a transition year for Tennessee, but it may be a good year to be a transition year, because is there an elite team right now that you say you would take against the field? No. And I probably would have said Georgia about that last year, even though they played down to their opponent, and they have done so this year. They didn't do so over the weekend. I just don't know that there's an elite team right now in college football, Caleb, that you point to and you say, them versus the field, let's have a real argument.
No, I'm with you. This has all the markings of 2007 happening all over again. And by the way, it sounds like you're on my side, Dave, because you're like, this is a good year to be a transition year. So what you're saying is this isn't going to perpetually be the case, what's happening this year, where there's no elite team. Meaning you don't think parity is that college football's in for more parity long-term with NIL.
Well, no, because the transfer portal and NIL, I do think they're in for more parity long-term. Maybe not at the bottom end. I think those teams are going to struggle because of less funding, because they're not going to have the TV deals. But on the top end, I don't think you're going to see a Georgia, which they've done over the past 3 years, or an Alabama, which they've done over the past decade plus, dominate the sport. I don't think you're going to see those type of, shall we say, New England Patriot type of teams.
So does that make this year a blip on the radar? Because you're saying it's a good year for Tennessee to be a transition team, but I'm arguing that maybe it's not, because there's going to be even more parity down the line, isn't there?
Well, I think it's a blip on the radar because of quarterback play to some extent. I think if you had elite quarterback play at a couple of different schools in the SEC, you'd be having a totally different conversation. But no, I think parity. I think you're going to see, this is the type of football you're going to see. Now, Georgia might still be elite, right? Because they've played down to their opponent and come through in the clutch. So they might still be elite. But if they're not, then I think you see more and more of that as time goes on, because of the transfer portal and NIL, that there's not going to be an elite program. So the other thing that definitely caught my eye as we asked today's tough question, championship contender or no, how does the national media view Tennessee? I think they view them in that second tier of teams that if things fall the right way, they could be a championship contender. So I'm hedging my bet just a little bit. So I will say, yes, I think you look at about 20 teams. There's 5 or 6 of which should be on that upper tier. I say that. And then you have Southern California, who just can't stop Powell Middle School from scoring. Michigan may be the best program in the nation right now. So I think there's another tier, Caleb, if things fall right, which for Tennessee, it'd be stay healthy, and they haven't. It would be get better quarterback play more consistent quarterback play, and they've started to, I believe, with Cooper Mays back into the fold. Caleb, I think they're on that second tier of championship contender. So I guess I would have to say no to the question if we had to go yes or no. But I think that could change in just a couple of weeks with who Tennessee has coming up if they play well.
I'm right where you are. I think right now, no, but not impossible. But look, we're going to know in 2 weeks. We're going to know in 2 weeks if November is going to matter for Tennessee or not. Like this is the two most important weeks of Tennessee's season. So we'll know pretty quickly.
You're right. The line moves by 4 points. Now, I thought last week or 2 weeks ago, when Tennessee was a significant double-digit favorite over South Carolina, that the guys in Vegas knew something about Cooper Mays and that he was coming back. I thought that, and I gave you a wink, and thought that on a Monday when we did our show before the South Carolina game. But explain this line to me and why it's moved by 4 away from the Vols. Tell me what that means, because you know gambling better than I do.
So this was shocking to me because you and I talked last Monday for Tennessee's early line against Texas A&M. They were favored by 7 before last weekend's slate of games. And on top of that, Tennessee, they were double-digit favorites over A&M at the beginning of the year if you did a futures bet. And then it became a touchdown favorite last week. Then after how Texas A&M played Alabama, the line moved to Tennessee -3. Now, I'm a little confused by this because I got to be honest. I don't know. They're reacting to Texas A&M playing Alabama close. Well, one, the reason this is weird for them to act this way is Alabama covered. So Alabama covered Vegas' own spread that they set against Texas A&M. So how is Texas A&M going to underperform their own expectations? And then they're going to say, well, based on that, we're going to move the line in their favor for when they're going to play Tennessee. Something tells me that they think they just react. Vegas themselves and the odds makers think are second guessing themselves for giving Tennessee too many points last week. Because look, let's be honest. Tennessee's favored by 3 or 4 now, depending on the sportsbook you use. That's a pick 'em. That's a pick 'em because Tennessee's at home and coming off a bye. And Vegas takes those two things into account.
Today's tough question brought to you by our friends at Hemp House Chat with 2 T's, hemphousechat.com. Only the premier CBD and Delta 9 products that are right there. And they've got the Big Orange Crunch. Check out the Big Orange Crunch. Use the promo code on any product and you get a 10% off. So we encourage you to do that. Hemp House Chat with 2 T's, hemphousechat.com. All right, Josh Heupel coming off of a bye week. I read all your stuff, Caleb. Don't take this wrong, but I purposefully didn't read this because I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. First, though, let's talk about the rankings. Tennessee is in that top 20 range, which, again, I think would speak to they could be a contender, but not quite yet. What do you think?
Yeah, they're tied for number 19 in the AP poll, and they are number 17 in the coaches poll, which is exactly what we've talked about. There are 2, I wanted to point this out. There are 2 teams they play the rest of the way that are ranked higher than them right now, which would be obviously Alabama and Georgia. However, FPI and SP Plus both have Texas A&M above Tennessee also. Barely, by like 1 spot each, which would put like 8 and 4 on the table if they lost to every team ranked higher than them. But they get A&M at home, but they also get Missouri and Kentucky on the road. So again, we're still looking at a Tennessee team where the range is 6-6 to 10-2 for Tennessee right now.
Well, I don't think they're going to go 6-6. That would, if you had to take 6-6 or 10-2, which would you take?
If I had to bet, I'd bet 10-2. But I'm saying that's the range right now. Well, the range is theoretically 11-1. But I mean, do you really think this Tennessee team, from what you've seen, is beating Alabama on the road and Georgia at home? I don't see that happening.
No, but I didn't think they'd beat Alabama last year. I think that our next topic is going to lead into that, and it's brought to you by our friend at AndyMasonRealEstate.com, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Josh Heupel coming off a bye. So like I said, I read your stuff. I love your stuff. It's on offthehooksports.com. But this one I specifically didn't read because I wanted to get a fresh reaction off Josh Heupel coming off a bye. And you say he's elite after bye weeks. I didn't even try to process it over the weekend. I knew you were writing the column, but I thought he probably would be because he's an incredible tactician and game planner, and you give those type of guys an extra 7 days to prepare, they're probably going to be pretty good. So I want you to tell me why he's elite, and I'm not surprised. It's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years of experience in Andy Mason's office, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best prices, best service, real estate, Knoxville. Do it, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Support our sponsors. They're why we are here. Why is Josh Heupel elite coming off of bye weeks, sir?
So let's just take what he's done at Tennessee so far. He's had 2 bye weeks. Both of them were coming off the bye week in both instances, 2021 and 22. He was facing a ranked team on the road. Last year's was LSU. We saw what he did off that bye week, 40-13 blowout.
They were incredible. They were incredible, but I thought that there were issues that LSU had with an early start, an early fumble, much like Tennessee had issues in the South Carolina game. Totally different issues, but there were things that went into the game that I didn't think helped LSU. And I thought
that's true, but Heupel had a touchdown pass to Jalen Hyatt dialed up that was it was completely schemed that he had done for 2 weeks. And
definitely not downplaying anything that they did in that game. That was impressive.
The year before, Tennessee went to Kentucky, and that was their signature win 2 years ago. This was a 10-3 Kentucky team, a ranked team. Tennessee was struggling to try to stay bowl eligible. Coming off a bye, Tennessee goes and beats Kentucky at Kroger Field at night, which we've talked about Tennessee's issues on the road at night. And so that was a huge win for them. Now, tracking him off byes, planned and unplanned. And I say unplanned because Heupel did have a bye at UCF one year where a game was canceled due to weather. And that counts as a bye, doesn't it? Because once the game's canceled, you're preparing for the next week. So it's the same.
For the sake of the discussion, we'll say yes, but I think it's kind of a goofy week, so you're not really preparing for the next opponent because you don't know that the game's canceled until 2 days before. But all right, for the sake of the discussion, we'll go ahead and take that one.
Okay, so including that, Heupel is 7-1 coming off a bye. Now, his one loss was in 2020, which is a COVID-shortened year and limited practices as it was. It was at Memphis, when Memphis was also coming off a bye. Memphis was the defending American Athletic Champions. He was at UCF at the time, and Memphis won by 1 point. That's his only loss coming off a bye. Now, let's delve into a little bit deeper. Heupel's critics are going to say he's 3-4-1 against the spread coming off a bye. That's a little misleading, though, because what people need to understand is the spread, Vegas takes into account when you're coming off a bye. So so whatever points they give you, they're going to give you even more points. So it's harder to meet that expectation. And they give Heupel a lot of points when he's coming off a bye. And a lot of these games have been against teams that themselves were coming off a bye. So you don't really have the advantage. What you need to look at is how has Heupel done when he's had a week off against an opponent that has not had a week off, which is Tennessee's situation with Texas A&M this week. He is 6-0 and 4-2 against the spread when that happens.
So Tennessee should play really well this week is what you're telling me, right?
They should. Not to mention, not all these other teams that he's played had a grueling fight like Texas A&M did with Alabama this last week. Most of them don't have that type of game the week before. So
this is getting a little bit of play on the message board. So I want to give it some credence here for just a second. You said Tennessee more likely to go 10-2 or 6-6.
I said they're more likely to go 10-2. If it's one of those two, it's more likely to go 10-2.
Okay, would everybody agree on that? Because Rocky Tom says 6-6, and he was first off the bat. So go ahead and give me your thoughts on the message board: 6-6 or 10-2. I feel pretty good about saying that if I had to bet a mortgage payment, Tennessee would be 10-2 over 6-6. I don't even think that's close. I think if you made it 11-1, that.
Well, then you're taking 6-6. It's more likely that they lose to Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, and Kentucky than it is that they beat Alabama and Georgia.
But I just don't see 6-6 at all being a possibility. Somebody says 10-2. Now if I threw 7-5 in there, if I threw 7-5 or 10-2, then you have a whole different discussion. I just don't see any way that they go 6-6. I don't see any way they slip to that point.
Well, if they lose this weekend, at Missouri and at Kentucky are still tough. and then Alabama and Georgia. That would be 6 losses.
Yeah,
none of those are like circled wins.
No, they're not. And the reason they're not is because it's pretty simple, I think, quarterback play across the board. So even Missouri is hanging with opponents, and they look pretty good this year. But when you compare their quarterback play to the rest of the league, it's what? About the same or maybe even above average this year?
I think what's helping Missouri is they are one of the ones with actually a good quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. Last year, we would have said that quarterback with a Bryce Young and a Hendon Hooker out there is the middle of the pack, right?
Right, exactly. So I'll bring this up. Here's why I'm leaning your way. After doing my research on
which way is that? Because I've almost talked myself into 2 ways.
10-2 is more likely than 6-6. Maybe 7-5 is debatable. But the more I'm thinking about it in my head, doing the post piece I did last weekend, we debated this with John. I think Texas A&M is a more likely win for Tennessee than Missouri or Kentucky because of the bye. I think the bye is huge for Tennessee.
Wow.
I don't think it's as much of a pick'em anymore because Tennessee had the week off, and I don't think you can underestimate having that week off.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far. I think Texas A&M. You would agree, or would you agree that Texas A&M, those 3 teams you just mentioned, is the best team just to show up on a Saturday?
Yes, but we're going to get into this, particularly tomorrow with the new segment that we talked about. But I think Texas A&M may have the dumbest coach of the 3, also, and that includes Eli Drinkwitz.
Wow, saying something. Here's the thing about Texas A&M. I've never seen a coach do such a great job of going in, raising expectations, and then lowering expectations because their fan base almost seems ecstatic with 4-2. So, I mean, over the weekend, they were able to hang tight with Alabama, and they lost 26-20, and that feels like a win. But what year are we in? The Jimbo Fisher experience shouldn't
year 6.
Yeah, shouldn't a close win to Alabama or close loss to Alabama and winning 8 games be bottom of the barrel at this point, that's looking like the kind of program they're going to be.
Yeah, you don't celebrate that if you're Jimbo Fisher at this point. And that's why I think, again, I want to emphasize this. Tennessee off the bye, Texas A&M emphasizing moral victories against Alabama. Who do you think has the edge just psychologically this weekend between the 2?
That's a good question. You?
It's got to be Tennessee. They got a week off. They're fully rested unless, and this is the only thing because we want to hash back to Vegas, moving to line 3. Maybe people in practice feel like Tennessee hasn't found a Brew McCoy replacement.
Well, I mean, how could they have? I mean, the injury just happened. By the way, I want to thank everybody who purchased the book, Celebrate 98, The Untold Stories Behind Tennessee's 1998 National Championship. It's right down there. If you want to click on it, you can order it. We're still doing the Give Him 6 campaign through the rest of the week. Every book sold, $6 will go to buy one of the AED machines that Brew McCoy has supported, the Peyton Walker Fund, which provides those sideline or it could be during practice, during games or practice that can literally shock a player back to life. So if you want to purchase the book, now's a great time. Christmas isn't far away. We greatly appreciate that. And we'll be at Hound Dogs on Friday with Fred White doing a book signing. That's right there in Kingston Pike off of Cedar Bluff. So a lot going on the program. And as we get back into game week, and then I love him, but he just wants to absolutely tear me up. That's what he does. Caleb Calhoun. I wrote a column that Tennessee's rushing offense is elite, and he is just like, no, what are you, crazy, Dave? Let's get to 4 downs now, and it's brought to you by our friends at Zen Sports.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show. 4 downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, so we get to 4 downs. Cooper Mays will tell us which down it is. But first of all, My contention has been, and I was pretty hot on this early through a couple of games, I don't think this is a Tennessee football team that's going to regularly hang 60 on opponents like last week. I think this is a Tennessee football team that is going to play a little bit more ball control, and that is just fine. I'm not saying they're going back to the 1940s and that they're going to run the wing T or anything like that, but this is a football team, I believe, especially with Cooper Mays back in the fold, that can run the football, and Tennessee ranks very, very highly in running the football. And it's not just high, Caleb. It's really high, as I pointed out in my column. So far, and I think we're almost to the point 4 or 5 weeks into the season where you can use some of these numbers. They're not just good in the SEC. They're good in the entire nation when it comes to running the football.
So what? Yes. Tennessee, they are averaging over 200 yards a game, and a lot of that was with Cooper Mays out, which works in Tennessee's favor, which we'll get to. But yes, the major caveat is, if you really look at the data, they have not played anybody good at stopping the run yet, and I mean nobody.
I want to do that, but let me first ask your thoughts on the eye test. When you see them run the football, and regardless of opponent, which is hard to do, I understand. But when you see them run the football, what do you think of this crew with and without Cooper Mays? Because I'll tell you what I think.
I think the right side of the line is pretty good with Javonte Spraggins and Cooper Mays. And even, honestly, we have to say this, Dave, recently, Gerald Mincey. I got to give Gerald Mincey some credit. The last couple of games, he started in place of Jeremiah Crawford last 2 weeks ago, and we didn't really hear any negatives from him after all the issues in camp. I see the right side blocking well, and I think the running backs, and this is a big one, the running backs run hard, particularly Jalen Wright. I feel like every time Jalen Wright is tackled, he's still going to try to get 3 extra yards out of it when he can. And that stands out a lot to me. Is Jalen Wright runs really, really hard. It reminds me of, dare I say this, because Fred always talks about, and he's right, Fred White, about how Jamal Lewis was probably a better back than Travis Henry. But Dave, Travis Henry ran harder, didn't he? Let's be honest. Travis Henry ran really hard.
Ran harder than
Jamal Lewis. Travis Henry ran harder.
Well, Jamal Lewis, I think, would have run hard. He gets hurt the 1998 national championship team, and then he realizes that he's a top-tier NFL talent. And I thought he shut it down to some extent towards the end of his career.
Possibly, but I don't think anybody ever ran as hard as Travis Henry did. I mean, he embraced contact. He would truck you every time he touched the ball.
Quick Uncle Dave story. Most uncomfortable question ever right after Jamal Lewis runs a 4.32 40 in the pro day, and he's going to be a top pick. I begin a question with Jamal. Obviously a disappointing career at Tennessee, but you're able to run a 4.2. What does that mean? And he did not like that question. So maybe that was a bit of a loaded question, but it was. I mean, he mailed it in for his last year, and that's fine.
They should have started Travis Henry that whole season. I remember watching Tennessee in that 99 season. They should have started Travis Henry. Travis Henry was the better back in 99 than Jamal Lewis. It wasn't a question.
I agree. Coop, what do people need to do before we get to 4 downs?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. Thank you very much. So let's get to first down. Coop
here. First down.
All right. So of Tennessee's wins and the times that they've been really good against the run, it's been a lot of unproven teams. They've been good running the football against teams that have trouble stopping the run. South Carolina's 75th, Virginia 111, and Florida 45th. So how much does that factor into Tennessee and their ability to run the football, Caleb? Because they haven't faced anybody that's fantastic against the run, not even close.
It's factored a lot into it. You brought up Florida being 45th, and Florida, how'd they do in the first half running the ball against Florida? They struggled a lot. And so I think this is a big deal. Now, I'm going to be fair. Cooper Mays wasn't in the game, and the running game did pick up in the second half. It did. And even though Florida was playing not, to run out the clock, I don't think they were playing to let Tennessee move the ball on them in the second half. And Tennessee did move the ball on them in the second half. But as a team, Jalen Wright averaged under 4 yards a carry in that game. And so that is a major issue. Now, in yards per attempt, Florida's actually much, much worse. They're down at like number 98 because of that one Kentucky game where Ray Davis just torched them on the ground. And UTSA is the best run defense Tennessee's faced by numbers at number 59. However, level of competition matters. UTSA, they would be number 111 if they were playing SEC competition. So,
here's my retort. Tennessee hasn't just been good. They've been very good running the football, 20 yards better than the second place team in yards per game, and that would be LSU. So Tennessee, 231 yards per game, LSU with 210 yards per game. So they played very well against maybe very average run defenses. Tennessee also the only team in the SEC that has 6 yards or more per carry average. So I think that is very strong. Now, if you want to look at nationally, where does Tennessee rank up? And this was written last week if you're looking on offthehooksports.com, but let me share the updated numbers with you. Tennessee is 7th against running the football, I should say, with 231 yards per game. Their average is only behind Oregon. Tennessee, 6.18 yards per rush. Oregon, 7 yards per rush. So I think this is a very, very good running football team, regardless of the opponent. And we'll find out because Texas A&M, their run defense is pretty darn good. So if you look at Texas A&M and what Tennessee will face this weekend, it's a little bit of a different level. We'll get to that right now. Second down, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. So as far as rushing defense, Texas A&M is 9th in the nation, giving up just 84 yards per game. That is phenomenal. And I don't need to tell you that ranks number 1 in the SEC by about a dozen yards over Kentucky. So we'll know if this is a really good running football team, which I think it is, in about a week. I think we'll have a good idea. If Tennessee can roll out 175 yards, I think that's a very successful day. What would you judge Tennessee, just strictly given yards rushing, about how good they played or how well they played running the football against A&M?
I mean, the mark is 5 yards a carry, so they got to average 5 yards a carry as a team on the ground. And so you're right, we will know. And there's still a little bit of grain of salt with Texas A&M because they were in such a hard fought game with Alabama. Like, how does the defensive line get motivated to still, as you said last year, play with your hair on fire? Because that's very necessary to have a good rush defense consistently. And will they be ready to do that knowing they lost last week?
Well, remember this too. Alabama's playing the style of ball. I'm not saying they're as good, but they're playing the style of ball where you are beat up the week after. Not quite to that extent, but closer to that than the Lane Kiffin type of extent.
More than ever before, because Alabama's relying a lot more on the run than in the past.
Agreed. Like pre-Lane Kiffin, at least. Brought to you by Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonus that turn into deposit nightmares. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get with their cash rewards program. You get a lot of cash for a welcome bonus. Earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with promo code HOOKED. That's right, HOOKED. Unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting, keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month. After that, refer friends to earn a betting percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 and over. And in Tennessee to bet. What down are we on, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
That's exactly right. It is third down. So Cooper Mays, the fact that they did this without him, they ran the football at a high level, and now he's back. How do you factor Cooper Mays's exclusion early and inclusion now? Here's my take. They were good without him running the football. Again, I factor in the opponent, but they're better now with him running the football. And they've gotten some guys like Ollie Lane, some big experience at center. Andre Courig, more work at left guard than he would have gotten otherwise because he wasn't going to start. So I think the Cooper Mays injury could actually, it cost him the Florida game, I believe, but could play in Tennessee's favor as far as this offensive line gelling into an elite running football team. You?
So I say this will be a test this week. This is a big projection for me. I'm with you. I think they're much better with Cooper Mays at center. I don't think him being out helped them develop depth at all. Ollie Lane was just not good at center, and he had 3. If you develop depth, that means you got better over time playing the position. Ollie Lane did not get better over time playing center, and Andre Carrick was never good at left guard. So I never saw enough development from him to actually believe in them ever.
Fair. I don't know that Ollie Lane got worse. I think he played better competition. And I think
I don't think he got worse. I just don't think he got better.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And
now I will say, to be fair to Ollie Lane, he struggled at left guard against South Carolina. But again, he was asked to play left guard on Thursday before Saturday. So he wasn't like that. He might get better at playing left guard this week, but he can't play center.
Very true. All right. 4th down, Coop.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Will fans be okay if this is more of a running football team, a team that a convincing victory is 40-17 instead of 66-23? I mean, will fans be okay with that, or will they always? Well, let me just ask you, because I have a theory on that.
Yeah, I think if Tennessee goes 10-2 as a running team, or even 9-3 this year, fans are totally fine. I think fans are very aware of what this team is, and I think that's going to be enough for them to stay above water until next year when everybody's excited about Nico. And so, I think they can live with that.
I think it's fine if they get to 10-2, so you jumped ahead, but I think Tennessee fans will be edgy the whole time. That this is not the offense they saw in 2022, and they'll be a little bit worried. So are they going to be okay? They'll be okay if they win 10 games or 11 games, but I think you'll be edgy up until that point. And it's like, oh, is this really going to happen? And one note from the message board, that he agreed with you. It might be true, but Lane will be a much better offensive lineman. Had to play center. If you can even take reps at center in this league, you'd be okay elsewhere on the line. So I think they do build some depth, but I agree with you that he didn't go out there and light the world on fire.
I'll tell you what, with Tennessee fans, forget Tennessee fans. If Tennessee goes 10-2 as a running team this year, do you know how good that is for Josh Heupel? Because it's huge. Because think about it. Defensive coordinators, everybody was spending the offseason figuring out this Josh Heupel offense, weren't they? Everybody was studying it and trying to figure it out. If Heupel adjusts and runs the ball this year, they're back on their heels and trying to figure out exactly what they can do to stop him, aren't they?
Yep. Where does Tennessee fall in the upcoming power rankings? Also, Andrew Stefaniak will join us and talk some Texas A&M. He covers the Aggies. We'll get you an early preview as we're bouncing back from a bye and ready to go. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Back in 2 minutes.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, let's get right to it. Where should Tennessee be in the power rankings? And our good friend Caleb Calhoun has the SEC power rankings each and every week. So Tennessee off of a bye. They're not just going to hold their position because crazy things happen around them. Be sure and hit like and subscribe. We were doing some research. I was over the weekend actually on a plane and realized that still 80% of our regular listeners have not subscribed. So it would mean a lot if you would go ahead and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate that. Give us a like, share, tell a friend. We continue to grow this thing, support our sponsors. They're all down below. If not for them, we wouldn't be here. So we greatly appreciate you as the numbers continue to explode through the roof. But be sure you've clicked on subscribe and turn those notifications on whatever platform you're listening on. And also give us a review. That helps us get out there too if you're on Spotify or Apple. So a lot going on the program today. Let's get to SEC power rankings right now. Here we go. SEC power rankings by our own Caleb Calhoun. And I'm just going to start right off the bat with the SEC power rankings. And it is, what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
We'll break them all down, but you got Texas A&M at 5. That doesn't sound like my guy, Caleb. Is questions Jimbo Fisher and then questions Bobby Petrino. Basically question any integrity that the program may have. That's how Caleb rolls. But he's got him at number 5. For the record, Tennessee at number 7 in the SEC power rankings. Are you surprised that you have, because Caleb's honest, objective, and doesn't dig his heels in the sand. He thought A&M would be a train wreck. They've been at the very least respectable, which isn't respectable as long as Jimbo Fisher's been there. But anyway, you've got him at number 5. What the H?
Yeah, I'm surprised I have them at number 5 because I thought the train wreck was going to start September the 23rd against Auburn, and it didn't. However, that doesn't mean the train wreck won't happen. Okay, maybe the railroad was just broken apart a little bit further down than I thought. Okay, because what happens if they lose to Tennessee this week and they are underdogs? All of a sudden, they've lost 2 straight. The heat comes on Jimbo Fisher. Everybody's already mad because of Jimbo Fisher's poor coaching decisions last weekend. So there's an argument that he may have lost the team just by coaching so stupid last Saturday. And I think that could really send this thing off the rails. But as of right now, they haven't gone off the rails. Power rankings are about what's happening right now. And right now, they are 5th. And I got to give them the break on that.
All right. So here we go. Let's go ahead and break down our rankings, and it's brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions, leadership, experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques. Hey, listen, they can protect your children, and that's what we're out to do. If they're a private school, you need to go to your administrator and say, HeraldGRP.com. Have you heard of Herald Group Security Solutions? Be in place so that we can avoid the tragedies that we've seen so often in the past. So we want you to do that. Again, Herald Group Security Solutions. All right, number 1, you've got Georgia. By the way, we're going to get Herald Group Security Solutions in public schools soon, and we're going to help to avoid some of these tragedies. But right now, private schools. So wherever you're listening, reach out to HeraldGRP.com to make your children safer. We've all heard of the tragedies. You got to go Georgia number 1, almost by default, don't you? I mean, They played well over the weekend, but had that even been a close game, given what we know about the fact that they play down to their opponents, I'm going to err on the side of giving Georgia credit, but they didn't even need it this week after the way they played Kentucky.
Yeah, and I had been insisting for a long time that last week after the Auburn win, the close one, I did dock them to number 2, but that wasn't me knocking them. It was me giving Alabama credit for how good they had been looking. I still give Alabama credit for how they looked this past weekend, but Georgia got the number 1 spot again because they didn't just beat Kentucky. They beat the brakes off them. They were clearly on a mission. They were clearly sick of what they were hearing in the media. And I did say Georgia covering last week. I was high on Georgia covering and got money on that one. But yes, I think they're back up to number 1 in the SEC power rankings because of how they blew out Kentucky.
Number 2, Bama. No great surprise. And I think that passes eye test as well. Number 3, Ole Miss. I was throwing dirt on Ole Miss's season just a couple of weeks ago, but look at the Rebels powering through at number 3. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, beating LSU 2 Saturdays ago was impressive. Their 1 loss is to Alabama. Not much shame in that at this point, given how Alabama's been playing recently. And people are going to laugh at them for not covering against Arkansas, only winning by a touchdown. Dave, you know how this works. Week to week SEC games, you're going to come up a little bit flat sometimes, and so getting out of there with the win is fine.
It's a tough physical conference. LSU at number 4. We both had high expectations for LSU. In my mind, they've already fallen short of what they should have done, but they do have some fight in them. So number 4, and then you've got Texas A&M at number 5. Is Missouri the most surprising, good or bad program on your power rankings that they're sitting there at number 6? Because had you asked me before the season, I would have thought Missouri would be around that 10 range.
I did tell you they were more dangerous than you thought at the beginning of the season.
You did.
Yes, they are surprising because I didn't think they were going to beat Kansas State, and I didn't think they were going to put up a fight against LSU. I love that pick 6 they threw because Missouri was going to cover the spread, but they threw a pick 6 in desperation at the end of the game, and that was a backdoor cover for me. So thank you for that pick 6, Missouri. I really appreciate it. But yeah, they're number 6.
And G. Smith says right now I'd put us at 6th or 7th, having only beaten the Lamecocks. So as a matter of fact, you have Tennessee at number 7, behind Missouri at number 6, just in front of Auburn, Kentucky, Florida, Arkansas, South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. So Tennessee at 7. Now, these are power rankings, and Tennessee didn't play over the weekend. So power rankings by design are very volatile. So where could you see Tennessee with a big win or a loss at home heading into next week? Because it feels like to me, that there is a possible elite team in Georgia this particular year. Possible. I still want to see what Carson Beck continues to develop in, but man, he looked good Saturday. And then it feels like Alabama's a tough physical team that you really don't want to play. And then it feels like a bunch of teams that either don't have a quarterback or don't have a real championship shot. So where could Tennessee be if they play really well? Joe Milton plays really well against A&M, or where could they be if Tennessee drops one of the Aggies?
So Tennessee has a very good chance if they win to move up. I think up to number 5. I don't know if they can leapfrog LSU, but if LSU struggles with Auburn, that might happen. So they could go up to number 4. Ole Miss isn't playing this week. Alabama's going to blow out Arkansas, and Georgia's not playing this week. I don't think Tennessee can leapfrog any of those 3 teams, but they could get up to as high as number 4, depending on how LSU looks and what they do to A&M. And also because Missouri's playing Kentucky this week, and Missouri's at Kentucky. And even though I have Missouri higher in my power rankings now, Kentucky's favored in that game. Without any analysis, Missouri at Kentucky. Dave, your money's on Kentucky, right?
Yes.
Not knowing anything right now.
Yes. Yes. So if I made you predict where Tennessee finishes in the power rankings at the end of the year, what's the highest they can be? What's the lowest they could be?
I mean, the highest they could be is number 1, theoretically, because I don't think that Georgia game is a lock of a loss the way everybody else thinks it is. And I've been saying that since the beginning of the year. I did not change my thoughts on that after the Florida game, by the way. So I think people overreact on Georgia week to week. And so I think Tennessee could absolutely finish number one. Do I think that's going to happen? No. I'd say, like, again, I would say fourth is where I'm at if I were to say what's the most likely finish or scenario for them. But also, look, you ask where Tennessee could fall to. If they lose to Texas A&M and they drop to, let's say, I mean, if they lose to Texas A&M, Kentucky and Missouri play a close game, Auburn plays LSU a close game, and Florida beats South Carolina, well, Dave, at that point, I've got to drop Tennessee all the way down to 10. So we're talking, there's a range of like 4 to 10 of where they could drop, where they can move after this week.
No, they could, but I think they make a jump after this week. And I think that after this week, as long as Tennessee rushes the ball for 150, 175 yards and is respectable against a good Texas A&M rushing defense, I think they could move up significantly. Out of all those other groups that may be in the top half, who do you feel least confident about? So if I look at your first half, read out your first half for me.
All right, so Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, Texas A&M, Missouri, and Tennessee. I still
confident about Ole Miss finishing in the top half at the end of the year.
I feel the least confident about Missouri, and I said Missouri could be dangerous, but they're about to have to visit Kentucky. Okay, so over the next couple of weeks, Dave, over the next 3 weeks, they visit Kentucky and they visit Georgia, and then they also host Tennessee and they host South Carolina. They're in all likelihood they're coming out of that 1-3, aren't they?
You would think so. I think that when I look at Ole Miss, I think they very well could be one of those programs, and this is going to be frustrating for their fans to hear, but they could be one of those programs that trying to think of a good. Okay, I got an example for you. Totally different coach. All right, and I'm not comparing the coaches, but Virginia Tech was relevant when
Frank Beamer years when they were in the Big East and a down ACC,
right?
Like 90s and 2000s.
But I would say the Frank Beamer years, right?
Right.
I mean, that's when they were just totally not relevant. I have a feeling that if Lane Kiffin stays at Ole Miss, that's going to be him. If he comes across a special quarterback like a Mike Vick, then yes, he could make a national championship type of run. But as for now, Caleb, I think he's a team that kind of is annoying, that kind of pokes and prods at better teams and hangs around. But aside from a special player, I think they'll be good because of good coaching. But I don't know that they can ever be elite. Can they be elite in Oxford and Lane Kiffin?
They could have been had they built a solid donor base, but I'm going to tell you what happened, and I know history of this. Until they got rid of Colonel Reb and things like that. Look, Ole Miss, and I said this last week, they were historically very hostile to the SEC integrating more than any other school. That resonated with a lot of recruits they could have landed, and it kept them from being able to recruit on a national scale. Because you know this, Dave, John Vault had Ole Miss rolling in the 60s. I mean, that was a dynasty in the SEC. The SEC integrated. Ole Miss really fought hard against it. They didn't. Well, every other school had the first black player in like 1969. Ole Miss's first was 1974 or 73. It was way later than everybody else. They built a reputation for being very hostile to it, and it hurt them. It hurt them for a generation. And so,
coming up, we're going to have a preview of the Texas A&M of the Aggies. We will visit with Andrew Stefaniak. I hope I'm doing okay on your name there, Andrew. You let me know here in a second, and at least you don't have the last name Hooker. So we'll visit with Andrew in exactly 2 minutes to get a preview of the Aggies bouncing back from a bye week. Here we go. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at ccti's.com.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show.
Who?
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, we're joined by a very special guest bouncing back from the bye week as we give you an early preview of Texas A&M. Andrew Stefaniak joins us. How'd I do, Andrew, on that name?
You know, the first time you missed it, that time you got it. So
Andrew Stefaniak. Look at him. All right, here we go. So where all can people follow your work, Andrew? We appreciate the time.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate y'all having me. You can head on over to Locked On Aggies. Those of you Tennessee fans wanting to know more about this matchup, I know we're going to discuss it right now, but if you want to hear my side of a more in-depth into this matchup, Locked On Aggies on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Perfect. Come into the season, Jimbo Fisher makes a change with Bobby Petrino as an offensive coordinator. I thought that would bring some semblance of order to the Aggies offense. I don't know that it's a wow hire like some of the other offensive innovators in college football, but I thought it was a solid hire. What did most Aggie fans think coming into the season?
A lot of people seeing what Coach Fisher's offense had done last year, a lot of people had the mentality of, hey, any upgrade, any new coach is an upgrade, really. It's what we saw last year from Coach Fisher's offense. Of course, the Aggies go 5-7, have a painfully awful year. Coach Petrino comes in, and Aggie fans are hopeful that a guy who, you know, there's obviously some off-the-field stuff going on with him and all that, but at the end of the day, he is a great college football offensive mind who is, you know, won at a high level, put together some good offenses at a high level. So Aggie fans were excited and still are with what he's done thus far.
Andrew, all we hear with Texas A&M on a weekly basis, I'm sure you hear, is that pesky buyout. and everybody's frustrated about it. So putting that aside, and when they think they won't be able to pay that buyout, look, I'm with you. I think the offense is looking much better now. I also think, I personally think Max Johnson was better than the quarterback y'all had before. He looks really accurate when he's throwing the ball. Given Jimbo Fisher's in-game mistakes that cost y'all a legitimate shot to beat Alabama on Saturday, could you see a offensive coordinator replacing the head coach as the head coach in a couple of years?
It's a conversation that it's going to build more steam. And when you're Texas A&M, you have to go to Knoxville, take on the Volunteers. You still got to go to Baton Rouge. You still got to go to Oxford and take on Ole Miss. You got 3 ranked road games left on this schedule. You already have losses to Miami and Alabama. If losses start to stack on top of one another, it's going to heat up more and more. I am personally in the camp of Texas A&M's schedule next year is frankly a pretty manageable schedule. You have a lot of that young talent from that 2022 class that is kind of developing this year, and we've seen it take a big step in the right direction. So I'm kind of in the camp of, hey, next year's the year. We don't want to get rid of Coach Fisher right now, because if you get rid of him, you're going to have people transfer out. You have a top 3 recruiting class right now that people are going to decommit. I think that down the road, if things don't get better, yes. But I'm in the camp that I think you want to stick with Jimbo for the time being, because you don't, that buyouts, I mean, it's around $80 million. I mean, it's a lot of money. So, but Coach Petrino, that's a good point. It's something that could happen down the road.
Yeah, it is a lot of money. And it seems like Jimbo Fisher, and Tennessee's had a coach that did this, likes to prop up the recruiting talk and the rankings as reasons that he's doing a good job. Does that ever wear thin with A&M fans before we kind of get to some X's and O's breakdown?
I think people are getting there. You look at what he's done recruiting-wise these last 3-4 cycles, incredible classes full of so much talent. And what has it really turned into? A couple could be. And people might say, well, you're in the SEC, you're playing the Bamas and you're playing the Georgias in these top-tier programs every year and competing for SEC championships with these teams. But at the end of the day, if you look at blue chip ratio, Texas A&M has one of the best rosters in college football, up there with the Ohio States and Georgias and Alabamas of the world, and they're not beating them. They've beaten Alabama, but this is a game. Alabama tried to hand you the game on Saturday, and you didn't take it from them. So I think people are getting there to that frustration level, like you said, of, hey, we have all this talent. When are we going to see it turn into an SEC West championship or an SEC championship game appearance? And that stuff just hasn't panned out yet. And people are beginning to get frustrated, which I think is fair, because with all this talent, you should be putting better results on the field than we've seen during Coach Fisher's tenure in College Station.
Yeah, let's all do like an informal vote real quick. From 1 to 85, who has the most talented roster, Tennessee or Texas A&M?
I'm going to have to lean Texas A&M there personally.
I probably would too. Caleb, how about you?
I don't even think it's close. It's Texas A&M.
Yeah.
It's easily Texas A&M.
I think so, despite the fact that Tennessee's had some guys come along that have been pretty good, especially in their defensive front seven. I agree. Now, the flip side, Tennessee's run the football, but they've done it against Virginia and South Carolina and to some extent Florida, teams that weren't very good at stopping the run. That's not the case with A&M. How stout are they up front and stopping the run? I think they're 8th best rush defense in the nation.
Well, what's so funny about that is heading into this season, that was the concern. How are we going to stop the run? The Texas A&M defense was bleeding yards on the ground last year. That was the concern. We get into this season, and they've been great. They've stopped the run at a high level. This front seven's done a good job to where something that I didn't think would be an issue has been an issue, and that's been more of the passing attack. I'm sure we'll get into that. But stopping the run, the Aggies have done a good job. They've got a lot of talent on that defensive line, a lot of talent in the linebacker room as well. So stopping the run, it was a concern heading into the year, but they've done a good job handling that well so far to where it's not easy to run the football on the Aggies.
Yeah, I want to touch into that because I would ask if you guys were going to be tested against Tennessee's run game, but y'all were tested but they were tested last week, and they held Alabama to 23 yards on 26 carries. Now, yeah, there were some sacks in there and things like that, which Jalen Milroe wasn't that effective running the ball. But curiously, I mean, Jalen Milroe did have his best game passing last week. Joe Milton has struggled through the year to this point. Is there a concern at Texas A&M with the pass defense against, I mean, I have to say it, below average passers?
Big time. Big time. Going into last week's game, that was my big key, was keep Milroe in the pocket, make him beat you with your arm. If he does, tip your cap. And what did he do? He beat you with his arm, tip your cap. The game plan wasn't frustrating to me. What was frustrating was how Jermaine Burton and some of these Alabama wide receivers, and I said this on my show, I said, listen, Jalen Waddle and some of these receivers aren't on this Alabama team. No knock to Jermaine Burton and Isaiah Bond and some of these other players, but this is not the Alabama receiver core of old, and they burned Texas A&M secondary all day long. So that was frustrating, and it's definitely a concern. The two games that you have lost have been Miami, where Tyler Van Dyke throws for about 750,000 yards, and then the Jalen Milroe, a guy who I didn't think was going to do much with his arm, does the best he does through the air all year long, probably in his entire college football career. So the pass defense is a concern, and a lot of it's going to come down to, can you get pressure? But looking at Tennessee and what they've done so far this year, the offensive line has done a pretty good job keeping people out of Milton's face, to what I've seen.
No, they have. Yeah. And I'm curious. You talked about Jalen Milroe. I'm sorry to interrupt, Caleb.
That's fine.
You talk about Jalen Milroe. Don't let him run and beat you. Kind of the exact opposite with, well, I don't know this exact opposite. Milroe's a better runner than Joe Milton. How do you think that the Aggies defend Joe Milton, who can run the football, but he's not a natural runner like Jalen Milroe? And maybe you want him in the pocket because he's got accuracy issues at times. So, Andrew, how do you think the Aggies defend him?
Well, first of all, he has a literal cannon for an arm. I mean, it's really impressive watching Milton throw the football. It's truly. But the game plan, I think, for him has got to be, like you said, I've watched him. I've scouted Tennessee a little bit this week. I've been watching some replays, watching the games, and you're right. The accuracy for Milton hasn't been what I was kind of anticipating. I was high on Milton going into this year. And so far, I don't think he has lived up to the preseason hype expectations that really everybody's had for him. And I think that the way you got to beat him is you do have to get pressure on him and force him. You got to keep him in the pocket. Like you said, let him make bad decisions, let him make poor throws, but you got to get pressure. That's the key, because I frankly don't believe in this Texas A&M secondary to stay with these receivers that long if you can't get pressure. If the Tennessee offensive line gives Milton time, I think this could be a game. This could be a shootout in Tennessee. I'm going to kind of lead toward Tennessee in this matchup. If they're able to get pressure on Milton, I think that's when he might make a mistake. He might turn the football over. So that's going to be the key is keeping him in the pocket. Let the accuracy issues work themselves out and get after him. Hope he makes some mistakes. I think that's going to be how you have to play Milton.
Caleb, doesn't that sound pretty familiar? Like on Tennessee, their defense, if they get pressure, they're good. If you go against their secondary, you're probably going to win. Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, but that hasn't been the case for Tennessee this year. And that's been kind of the underrated part that I've been talking about. If you saw Tennessee against South Carolina, their secondary actually played very well. I want to flip the side because I want to flip to that side because I want to talk about Texas A&M's offense. I think, Andrew, was this due to lack of play calling or poor play calling, or are there issues up front? Because Texas A&M had about 2 or 3 times last game. There was a 4th and 1 early in the game and a 2nd and goal from the 2 late in the game. And in both instances, they got pushed back. They got stopped on the 4th and 1. Are there short yardage run blocking issues right now with this offensive line?
I think that there are all kinds of everything issues with this offensive line. Short yardage running is one of them, like you said. Flat out being able to stop the pass attack from other teams or the pass rush from other teams. Max Johnson, Texas A&M quarterback, was on his back the entire game. I mean, he was looking at the sky the whole game. They were in his face. Even when he made some good throws and made some good decisions, he was getting hit. So this offensive line, like you said, they weren't getting any push on some short yardage situations, and they aren't giving Max Johnson time. It's definitely a concern. And it's funny because going into this game, I don't think I was stoked by the offensive line and their play, but it wasn't like a clear flashing red light concern. And so this was the game where, now it's Alabama. Obviously, it's a different animal from some other opponents, but they got pressure on Max Johnson the whole game, and the Texas A&M offensive line really couldn't do anything. You have a right tackle. You have a freshman, Chase Basant is a true freshman, and he had his worst game. He graded out on PFF at 17. I don't think I have ever seen that. Never seen that in my life. Yeah. So the offensive line is struggled, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you. This is one of those games where when Max Johnson sits back to throw the football, I'm just going to close my eyes and cross the fingers and hope that I open them and somebody's caught the football and he's not looking at the sky.
Yeah, there are 2 stats I would look at, and that's Texas A&M is allowing about 4.5 tackles for a loss per game and 2 sacks per game. So to me, it seems incumbent. And for those that are just joining us, Andrew Stefaniak covers Texas A&M for Locked on Aggies. It seems like Tennessee's got to get pressure with their front seven, because I don't know that Max Johnson's great, but I think he's good enough to beat an average secondary. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's a fair assessment of Max Johnson. The one thing, Caleb, I'm a little bit going to disagree with you on the Connor Wigman to Max Johnson. That was the starter that went down. I think that we have seen a bit of a dip in that Alabama game. I'll be brutally honest with you, and we can make these statements as much as we want. I think they win that game on Saturday against Alabama with Connor Wigman in there. He flashed a lot, so you lose him, it's a big deal. Max Johnson, though, is a capable backup that you don't really see that often in the SEC. I mean, a true capable backup that can come in and win football games. So, yeah, he can pick a secondary apart if he's given time, but that's what it's going to come down to. If Tennessee's living in the backfield, he'll make bad decisions. If he's got time, I think that he'll pick the secondary apart a little bit, mostly thanks to the talented receivers the Aggies have.
Yep. Andrew, good stuff. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, I just last wanted to say, what about, okay, so we talk about front seven. Does it need to be the front seven or the front four? Because Max Johnson looks like a pretty smart quarterback, and I feel like if you bring a lot of people, he picks up blitzes pretty quickly. So you got to get pressure with him with your front four, don't you?
Yes, I agree with you on that. I think that he's a veteran, played at LSU, played a lot of SEC football games. He can pick up blitzes. Is a great point. So yes, if your front four can dominate the Texas A&M offensive line and you can get pressure just with them, then you're going to really succeed in stopping this Texas A&M offense. If the Texas A&M offensive line is able to stop that front four, that's when Max Johnson might be able to pick you apart a bit. So that'll be to me, the trenches is going to be the key to this football game, both sides of the ball for both teams.
Great stuff, Andrew. Again, how do we follow your work?
Yeah, everybody that's tuned in here, you can head over to Locked on Aggies. I will be breaking down this game all week. So if you want to hear more in depth into the Texas A&M perspective, head on over and check it out. I appreciate it.
I thought you may have hinted earlier that you were leaning towards picking Tennessee. Is that the case, or do you know yet? I don't want to make you.
No, yeah, you can. It's fair. I lean toward Tennessee winning this football game, but I do think Tennessee fans need to look at this Texas A&M team and say, "Hey, this is not your normal 4-2 unranked team. This is a good football team that I think has shot themselves in the foot at times, and at any point can kind of pop off and surprise you." So I lean toward the Vols winning this game, but I do think, Vol fans need to know this is a football team that if they play well, they can beat anybody in college football.
Oh, here's a good question for the message board. I'm going to keep you just a little bit longer, Andrew, if you don't care. Who has a better game, Milton or Johnson? Let me ask you that, Caleb, first, and then I'll ask Andrew.
Well, one thing I'll say, Tennessee fans that are in here, I'll tell you this right now. Neyland, I have never been. I got to get down there. I've been to a basketball game in Knoxville. I haven't been to a football game. The atmosphere in Neyland is the best, I think, in the SEC, arguably college football. I mean, it's insane. So, and that leans into my take here. I just think the home field advantage could be too much in this game. I think Milton's going to have a good football game. I think I lean toward Milton having a better game than Max Johnson in this game.
All right, Caleb.
It's so early in the week, I don't know, because it depends on how healthy Joe Milton is. But right now, I lean towards that too, largely because of what we just talked about. Tennessee, as Andrew probably knows, has a very, very good pass rush that has shown itself throughout the year. And so if Texas A&M has what you're talking about, issues at offensive tackle, well, Spencer Rattler paid for that badly with no help at offensive tackle when he was facing Tennessee. So I could see Max Johnson paying for it too.
Yeah, great stuff, Andrew. Really appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and if when you get up to Neyland, let me know. I'll take care of you with some ribs or something like that.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that, Andrew Stefaniak, and he is with a Locked On Aggies. So check him out. He was at SEC Media Day, so it was great to get him on and get a preview of Texas A&M. So that I hate when records are attached to quarterbacks like it's a statistic. But if you had to go into this game with Joe Milton or Max Johnson, who are you going into this game with?
Max Johnson. Max Johnson. I'm not even thinking. I'm going into this game with Max Johnson. Now, I think Joe Milton will have a better game, but that's because of moving parts around them. But I'd go into the game with Max Johnson. I saw enough to say with Max Johnson's an accurate thrower. I'm a fan.
Okay, let's take a look at the rating for a second. Okay, so you have Max Johnson at 8 with 150.95 rating. That's 8th in the SEC. Joe Milton is 10th. You say it like it's a slam dunk. That's a little bit closer. They're about 10 points apart on quarterback rankings.
Compare their competition so far to this point. That's actually embarrassing that Joe Milton isn't beating him handily.
Fair. The Cooper Mays absence factor, big factor. See, I think that's a huge factor. I think this is a different, and I'm not saying this because we do the Vol report with Coop. I think that's a huge monster factor. I don't think they lose to Florida if Cooper's in the game.
Joe Milton's second worst QBR and worst quarterback rating of the year were against South Carolina with Cooper Mays back in the game.
Okay.
So it's, I mean, again, that South Carolina game, people thought got a little higher on him. I got lower on him after that. Now he was playing with a knee brace or a leg brace. Now that may have impacted a lot of what he was doing, but I thought he played very poorly in that game.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to get to, we're going to look back over the weekend, and Caleb's already calling for one coach to be fired, which is pretty strong. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Enjoy life better when you see better. Local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular examination. CCTeyes.com, CCTeyes.com. Look at me. No contacts. I am all set. So it is fantastic. CCTeyes.com. Know that they're local and they care about you. And you don't get that just anywhere. So we look back at week 6 in college football. Caleb has the recap. Check it out on offthehooksports.com. No question about it that the story of the weekend was Mario Cristobal and deciding not to take a knee. How in the world you can make that mistake blows me away. And this is the type of coach that, going back in some of their coaching churns, that Tennessee would have liked to have approached, and they didn't think they could at times because Tennessee was just such a mess organizationally from the top. Now they could call Mario Cristobal and he would leave in Miami in a heartbeat. But man, that is one of those moments that forever stains your legacy. We talk about Kevin Steele giving up 700 yards or some at some point. Was that
actually? It's funny you bring up Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele is the inventor of this. Kevin Steele's first year at Baylor in '99, his second game, it was 24-21 against UNLV, and he tried to punch it in for a touchdown when he just had to take a knee. UNLV recovers a fumble, returns it at the end of the game to win 27-24. Kevin Steele's argument was, I just wanted to stomp on their throat. I felt it was good for our team's confidence to try to get it in again. So
that's dumb.
Mario Cristobal coached with Kevin Steele on Alabama staff. Great to see the mentor teaching the protege.
Yeah, if you can't do the math that you should take a knee, that would be a major concern. Now, the other parallel I'll pull to this is when Joe Milton jumped out of bounds against Ole Miss. That I think you always wonder in the clutch, is that a question? Okay, so maybe it won't be.
For Milton, that was a quick reaction, and I've been critical of him from the start that I think he panics when he has to think on his feet, which is a problem with the quarterback. I'm not going to pretend that's not, but you don't have to think on your feet with what Mario Cristobal did. You take the knee, and by the way, Dan Wolken actually tracked this to his credit. Mario Cristobal did this, about 4 years ago when he was at Oregon. He could have run the clock out. They fumbled the ball against Stanford, and Stanford came back and won. Mario Cristobal, Miami has never taken a knee with the lead. They don't have the kneel down in their playbook, Dave. That's what's insane about this. How do you not have the kneel down in your playbook?
That is truly insane. It just blows me away that would even be the case. Oklahoma proves it's legit in the Red River Showdown. I tell you what, I was blown away by is that's going to be an SEC gym, and it's just growing up watching that in the Big 12. For that to be an SEC gym, Texas and Oklahoma, that will be the premier game early in the season, replacing Tennessee, Florida. That is going to be something special. And the Dylan Gabriel story, if you didn't see that game, here he looks like, I thought on the last play when he throws a touchdown pass to win the game that he was ducking down basically to take the sack. And then basically the ball comes out of this group of people in the pocket and it's a touchdown play. I was really blown away by, and I have been blown away by the way Oklahoma has played this year. I will say this, in the future SEC, if we took them into account, Texas and Oklahoma right now, there is not a team that I think is 100% legit, and I'm including Georgia in that, who you mentioned at 3 silences their critics. Thoughts on those two topics?
That's an intriguing one, but I think in this year with so much, again, I don't think there's any elite team this year. So like you said, and I agree with you on that. So yeah, Georgia silences critics. Oklahoma proves it's legit. Dylan Gabriel, as people know, played for Josh Heupel in 2020 at UCF. And we have to reset what we're thinking about. Do we reset what me and you thought about Brent Venables, Dave? Or do you think this is a flash in the pan and it's still long-term? He's not going to last at Oklahoma.
I'm resetting a little bit. Yeah, I'm resetting a little bit. I'm not completely sold. And I would rather have, despite his issues, Steve Sarkisian as my head coach, who's Texas's head coach. But I'll reset a little bit. I mean, I think he could have success there. Alabama lead schools still alive. We're talking about 1-loss teams. There are a bunch of schools still alive, but I agree with you. Alabama look like the most impressive. Notre Dame, Texas A&M are done. We're talking about championship hopes.
Yep. Playoff hopes. It's over. Notre Dame's not coming back from this. They can't recover. And
well, I told you, Marcus Freeman, listen, when your players cheer for you unanimously as being named the head coach and replacing Brian Kelly, who went to LSU, that's a sign that he's a player's first coach. And this is going to, whatever they do early with Marcus Freeman, it's going to go downhill from here. So these are the best days, and they're not great. Louisville leads basketball still looking good. Louisville just kind of out of left field. The Pac-12 race.
By the way, the other basketball school, just wanted to mention, North Carolina is still undefeated too.
It's true. Pac-12 race gets interesting as Colorado and USC survive. Survive's the right way to put it. Yeah, I don't think USC has defense to be able to win a college football championship at all.
Lincoln Riley doesn't care about it. He's the Mike D'Antoni of college football. I've been saying about it. This is where he's different from Josh Heupel, who, whatever you think about him, does care about defense. The Pac-12 was looking like the most dominant conference. And this is what happens when October comes. They're beating each other up. So UCLA knocked off Washington State, and now there are 3 undefeated teams left. Oregon and Washington are playing this weekend, so there will be 2. That's going to be the game to watch. Oregon and Washington is going to be epic.
Big Ten, a 3-team race. I don't know that I agree with you there. I think it's Michigan, and I think it's because of Ohio State without a quarterback has come back to the pack a little bit. Penn State's just kind of Penn State to me. Until they prove it, I don't believe it.
But nobody else is on that. But see, the thing with Michigan is Michigan still hasn't played anybody. You're going to see in a second, I don't have them in my top 10 still this late in the year. They're still not a top 10 team because they haven't beaten anybody.
Yeah, the Heisman race, Michael Penix Jr., Dylan Gabriel. Okay, Penix, of course, of Washington. You've had him at the top for a while. Dylan Gabriel, quarterback at Oklahoma.
I had Cameron Ward of Washington State, but I knocked him out because of how he played against Oregon State.
Right, and then Brock Bowers, tight end at Georgia. I'm going to go on a little soapbox, and it's not against you at all, but it was a national analyst that said Brock Bowers should be on your Heisman vote. Come on, Heisman voters. Well, I am a Heisman voter, and I am aware of him. But I'm also aware that the quarterback touches the ball every single snap. So, I mean, listen, he may be the best player, regardless of position in college football. But to me, you've got Shedeur Sanders at number 4. Colorado is not where they are without him. You've got Jaden Daniels at 5 for LSU. To me right now, and I haven't done my digging, and I will argue to the hilt when I do my digging. I do my 3 hours of prep before I do my Heisman vote, and then I'll argue. But to me, Shedeur Sanders deserves to be 1 or 2 with Penix Jr. right now because I think he's a special player with the eye test, and I don't think Colorado is anywhere close to where they are. By the way, I was on a plane last night. Maybe you can Google and figure that out with a prospect flying into Chattanooga who was at Colorado over the weekend. He had a nice new crisp Colorado pullover. But I've got Shedeur Sanders higher than you. As a matter of fact, if I had to sit down and do it right this second, he might be number one.
So you have a case for Shedeur Sanders as MVP because you're right. This is one of those where, like, how much do they elevate their team? And Colorado is probably 0-6 if Shedeur Sanders isn't there, aren't they? Right now.
Yes.
And yeah, so I could get with that. And it's kind of the opposite of Jaden Daniels, who has a lot of talent around him, but Jaden Daniels' stats I just can't ignore. They're insane if you go look at them. But I'm right now still going with team success. Look, I get your point about Brock Bowers, but it's kind of like Will Anderson last year at Alabama. I think sometimes there are exceptions every now and then. And I think I'm going on a limb. I think we might be looking at the future greatest tight end of all time in Brock Bowers. I mean, that guy can play football.
No, he's really good. G. Smith says, where is UGA without Bowers? Well, see, I still think they're undefeated. Jaw Jackson says that sucks the Heisman has to go to a quarterback. Well, yeah, but and they don't give you specific criteria. They just say most outstanding player. But I will tell you this, I go with MVP in the back of my mind, who had the biggest impact on the win-loss record. That's how I go. But everybody has their own. Like Bo Jackson, somebody as special as him. You might vote for him even though Auburn was going to win as many games. I'm just throwing him out as an example. There are exceptions, but for the most part, I'm going to go with a guy who gets you the most wins. Brought to you in part by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates. It's fantastic. And they had the signing over the weekend. Facebook.com, Sports Treasures TN, Facebook.com, Sports Treasures TN. Follow them, and you will be glad that you did because they've got Tennessee stuff coming out left and right. Be sure and hit that like and subscribe button as we take a look at the top 10 and Caleb's top 10. He's got Ohio State number 1. I would have Michigan number 1, followed by Oklahoma at 2, Florida State 3, Georgia 4, North Carolina 5, Oregon 6, Penn State at 7. That's a little too high for my liking. Washington, Louisville, Texas. Caleb's list is very fluid, and speak to that fluidity because I think there are some teams that you agree are not going to be in the top 10 when we're having this discussion in about a month.
Yeah, this is not a power ranking, so it's not who's playing the best, and it's not a projection. It is what is your record and what is your schedule strength and who has head-to-head advantages. And right now, I'm sorry, 1-loss Texas is ahead of Michigan. 1-loss Alabama, to me, is ahead of Michigan. I think 2-loss LSU and 1-loss Ole Miss might be ahead of Michigan because Michigan has played cupcakes. I don't care how bad they beat them. They've played JV teams to this point. So call me when Michigan plays somebody relevant, and until then, I'm not putting them in the top 10. By the way, I had Georgia barely top 10 last week. I elevated them because, again, on paper, and my top 10 is only on paper. It's only body of work. That's it. It's not eye test. And on paper, Georgia beat an undefeated team last Saturday, a week after beating a 4-2 team on the road. That vaulted them to number 4. You got to get a couple of quality wins. And I'm sorry, Michigan, beat somebody with the pulse, and then call me.
No, fair. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Hit that like and subscribe button. Weekdays, we join you at 10 a.m. wherever you podcast or stream, but especially YouTube. Get on board, like and subscribe. We greatly appreciate that. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This is